Joining us today is Mitchell Frankel, founding partner of Sussman & Frankel LLP. Mr. Frankel has over 22 years experience in representing clients in areas of civil and commercial litigation, personal injury law, medical malpractice, products liability, insurance law, and more. Counsel, thanks for being me. That's got a lot of stuff. Thanks, there. David. All right, let's talk about, we're going to really get into some of the commercial litigation area. You're a new business owner, and you open the doors for the first time, and I'm sure there's probably some type of protections you should immediately be thinking about when you open the doors. What should you be looking at?
Well, several things. One in particular would be getting some insurance for your business, such as general liability insurance. Now, of course, it depends on the type of business that you have, but let's say you are in the business of selling goods and or services, you'd want some general liability insurance coverage. In case during the course of your business, one of your customers was injured or another person is injured and a lawsuit could ensue. Okay,
so liability is really different than we're talking about in terms of liability for, let's say, an injury. Is different than what you would say if you're not getting paid on a particular contract, right? That's different.
That is different.
When we're talking about the liability aspect, what are we really talking about here in terms of what types of personal injury protections should you have as a business owner?
Sure. Well, let's assume you are a business that sells goods. You might want to be insured for product liability. Let's assume you have a tire store and you sell tires. What would happen if some of the tires that you sell are defective? So you'd want product liability coverage.
Okay.
If you are a business that sells services, such as a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, you'd want to look into professional liability insurance, also known as errors and omissions coverage.
Okay. Well, now let's get back to the liability portion where somebody. Sure. Let's get to the injury. But by the way, you do both. Am I correct?
I do.
So you do a little both. You do the personal injury if somebody actually gets hurt, but you also do on the commercial end.
I do both.
What type of protection should, let's say, a business owner have with respect to some of the personal injury protections? Maybe somebody getting hurt in the store. What other types?
Sure. Well, you have.
Give me an example.
Sure. Not only getting hurt on your premises, someone gets hurt on your premises, you should have coverage, and that would be through a general liability policy. But let's assume that you have some vans or delivery trucks, and you're making deliveries in the course of your business, and you have some employees who are driving those vans.
Because you're not generally driving it; your employee is usually driving it.
That is correct. Okay. But as you know, you are as an owner responsible for the actions of your employee during the course of the business, and while they're acting within the scope of that business. So if they were in an incident and hurt someone, let's say in a car accident, you as the employer are subject to liability.
Just generally in terms of getting back to some of the coverage, the liability coverage, and you're you have your employee driving a car for you or a van. What kind of coverage do you want? 500,000, $1 million? What would be if?
I would say minimum in this day and age, $1 million coverage, and you, depending on the size of your business, probably should have excess coverage. There's ways to get the premiums down by having a higher deductible, and that would also depend on, again, the extent and the size of your business.
I assume there's also coverage that you may want, in terms of somebody walking in front of your property, your sidewalks, things. Am I correct? That's also liability coverage?
That would be under premises liability, and that would be covered, or should be covered under your general liability policy.
Let's get back to some of the commercial end now.
Sure.
You're not getting paid. Goods and services. What are the difference between goods and services, by the way? Just so everybody understands.
Good, like I said before, an example would be just saying you're selling tires.
Okay.
Right? That's a good. Selling services would be, like I said, a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. You're selling your time, your expertise, your services.
Okay, well, let's say, what kind of protections can you have with respect to goods and services? I mean, shouldn't you be entering in some kind of contract? Is it an oral contract? Is it a written contract? How do you protect yourself with these particular problems that are going to arise?
Right. Well, it's hard to protect yourself completely from someone, what's called a breach of contract. You selling your goods, you selling your services, and not getting paid for those goods and services. What you can do to try to protect yourself is to enter into a written contract with your customers.
But you know as well as I do, in the real world, a lot of business gets done through a handshake. Am I correct?
That is absolutely true. And oftentimes the business realities dictate that you're not going to have time to do a written contract. However,
let's say you do. You're smart enough to at least get some kind of something in writing. what would you, I don't know, recommend should be in the contract? What kind of provisions do you usually see in these contracts?
Well, what you should do is,
Yeah.
obviously, you should probably see an attorney as you're starting up the business, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Okay.
So if you can head off potential problems by seeing a lawyer initially, that would be worth it. Some of the provisions might be having a reasonable attorney fee provision. Someone does not pay you, you can sue them not only for the amount that they owe you, but for your amount of reasonable attorney's
So you get
costs.
your legal fees back.
Yeah, and that can be a very powerful incentive for someone to pay you if they're going to be responsible not only for the amount that they owe, the legal fees, which can be quite expensive at times.
How about another provision? I think we had talked off camera a little bit about arbitration
Sure.
and how to bring the action. What kind of provision are we talking about there?
Well, I'm not. It all depends on the type of business that you have. But if you have a relatively small business and your amounts that are owed are between 10, 100,000, 150,000 for each particular customer, it'd be quite expensive to go with an arbitration provision, because arbitration provisions can be, the filing fees for arbitration can be quite high. You could write in just having you could write into the contract an arbitration provision, but in these kind of cases, I think it might be best just to say a provision that says you waive your right to a jury trial and have a bench trial instead.
Okay, well, we don't really have much time, so can you give us, I don't know, maybe your top 1 or 2 tips you would give to a new business owner? They just open up a business, Bronx, Manhattan, wherever, and you see them for the first time and they say, Mr. Frankel, please give me some advice. What do I do? What's maybe some of the best advice you might want to give them?
Well, 2 things right off the bat, obviously, is like what I said before. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. See an attorney to set up some of these like agreements that protect you and provide you with protection, so that if it ever does go to court, you are in a better position to get your money back, or if someone sues you, you are in a better position to defend yourself.
Okay, now before we let you go,
Yeah.
we need your contact information, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to call you. Give us your best way what's the best way to get you?
Best way is by way of email, which is mdf@sussman-frankel.com.
Okay, I see we actually have that on there too. And what is your phone number?
212-688-8895.
Okay, and you're going to come